The sterile beep of the heart monitor flatlined like a gunshot in the dim hospital room, shattering the fragile, quiet Connor had clung to for weeks. Zachary's hand, once strong enough to pull him through crowded Brooklyn street fairs and late-night arguments over takeout Thai, now lay limp in his, the skin cool and papery as an autumn leaf. "Fight, baby, just one more time," Connor whispered, his voice cracking like thunder over the East River. But Zachary's eyes, those piercing green eyes that had first locked onto his across a dive bar in the village, fluttered shut, sealing their shared world in silence. Rain hammered the window panes of Mount Sinai's oncology ward, turning the Manhattan skyline into a watery smear of neon and regret. Connor collapsed against the bed rail, his wedding band digging into his palm like a promise he couldn't keep, as the nurses rushed in with the crash cart. Too late. Always too fucking late. Connor Riley had never believed in soulmates until Zachary Kane crashed into his life like a rogue wave off Coney Island. It was a sticky July evening in 2018, the kind where the air hung heavy with the scent of halal carts and unfulfilled dreams. Connor, 28 and fresh off a soul-crushing layoff from his graphic design gig at a midtown ad agency, had wandered into the Stonewall Inn for the first time since coming out at 18. He wasn't looking for love, just a cheap gin and tonic to drown the echo of his parents' disappointed sighs back in Scranton, Pennsylvania. But there was Zachary, all 6'2" of him, leaning against the scarred oak bar with a lopsided grin that cut through the haze of cigarette smoke and pulsing house music. "You look like you just lost a bet with the universe," Zachary said, sliding a stool over with his boot. His voice was gravelly, laced with that faint Boston edge from his summers on Cape Cod. Connor laughed. A real one, the kind that bubbled up from his gut, and before he knew it, they were trading stories. Connor's failed attempts at drag brunch illustrations, Zachary's endless shifts as an ER nurse at Bellevue, dodging bullets from gangbangers and heartbreak from cheating boyfriends alike. By closing time, they were stumbling out onto Christopher Street, arms linked like they'd been doing it for years. Zachary kissed him under the glow of a rainbow flag strung crookedly across a lamppost, tasting like whiskey and possibility. "Your trouble, Riley," he murmured against Connor's lips. The good kind. 6 months later, they were subletting a shoebox walk-up in Williamsburg, Zachary's scrubs tossed over Connor's sketchpads, their laughter echoing off exposed brick walls. Marriage equality had been law for years, but when they tied the knot in a no-frill ceremony at City Hall in 2020, masks optional, confetti mandatory, it felt like rewriting their own constitution. Life in New York wasn't a fairy tale. It was a grind wrapped in glitter. Zachary pulled doubles to cover the rent, his broad shoulders straining under the weight of bedpans and bad news. Connor hustled freelance gigs, designing logos for queer-owned coffee shops and protest posters for Black Lives Matter rallies. They fought over dumb shit, whose turn it was to scrub the tub, why Zachary flirted too hard with that cute barista at Devotion. But they always ended up tangled in sheets stained with last night's pad thai, whispering apologies into each other's collarbones. "You're my anchor," Zachary would say, tracing the freckles across Connor's nose. In this storm of a city, the first crack appeared in the fall of 2024. During a routine checkup Zachary chalked up to too many night shifts, a persistent cough, the kind that rattled like loose change in his chest. Connor noticed the weight loss first, Zachary's jeans hanging loose on his hips, his cheekbones sharpening like knife edges. "It's nothing," Zachary insisted, waving off Connor's worry with a forced smile over pumpkin spice lattes at their corner spot in Greenpoint. But the biopsy results came back on a Tuesday in October, while Connor was mocking up a flyer for a drag queen's birthday bash. acute myeloid leukemia. Stage 4. The words blurred on the doctor's iPad screen, but the prognosis stuck like gum on a subway sole. 6 months, maybe 8, with aggressive chemo. Connor's world tilted. He quit freelancing cold turkey, holing up in their apartment with takeout containers and tear-soaked pillows. Zachary, ever the fighter, dove into treatment with the same ferocity he'd used to tackle homophobes in dive bars back in college. Chemo sessions blurred into radiation rounds, the loft filling with the acrid tang of sickness and the hum of infusion pumps borrowed from the hospital. Friends rallied, drag shows turned fundraisers, GoFundMe links shared in group chats, but the nights were Connor's alone, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, bargaining with a god he'd long ago ghosted. By winter, hope was a threadbare coat. Zachary's hair fell out in clumps, collected in a Ziploc bag labeled Wig Fund with a Sharpie heart. Connor shaved his own head in solidarity, the clippers buzzing like angry bees in the bathroom steam. They watched old rom-coms on a laptop balanced on Zachary's lap, When Harry Met Sally for the nostalgia, Brokeback Mountain for the ache, Zachary's head heavy on Connor's shoulder, his breath shallow as falling snow outside. "If I don't make it," Zachary rasped one night, fingers interlaced with Connor's over the quilt his mom had sent from Hyannis. "Promise me you'll keep drawing those wild dreams of yours. Don't let this city chew you up." Connor choked on the words, pressing his lips to Zachary's temple. "You're not going anywhere, Kane. We're in this till the end credits." But the donor registry search dragged on, a digital haystack with no needle in sight. Connor wasn't a match, his Irish-Scottish blood too mismatched for Zachary's mixed Jewish-Italian roots. Family was out. Zachary's parents had cut ties years ago over lifestyle choices, and Connor's folks back home prayed for conversion therapy in hushed phone calls. Desperation clawed at them, but love held the line, fierce and unyielding. Spring bloomed cruelly in 2025, cherry blossoms mocking the wilt in Zachary's cheeks. The flatline came on a drizzly afternoon in May. But no, wait, that was the hook, the echo of what almost was. In truth, it was June, humidity thick as grief, when the monitors began their erratic dance. Connor had stepped out for coffee. Black, no sugar, Zachary's ritual, leaving his husband dozing under the fluorescent buzz. He returned to chaos, codes called, paddles charging, nurses in a blur of blue scrubs. Zachary's heart stuttered back once, twice, but the third time, it surrendered. In the aftermath, the room emptied like a stage after the final bow. Connor sank to the linoleum, Zachary's wedding band, now loose on his finger, cold against his skin. "I love you," he mouthed to the empty air, the words a eulogy and a curse. Outside, the city pulsed on, indifferent, taxis honking, pedestrians dodging puddles, life refusing to pause for one broken heart in a sea of millions. Grief was a tidal wave, pulling Connor under in the weeks that followed. The loft felt haunted, Zachary's cologne lingering in drawers, his ER badge clipped to a lanyard by the door. Friends dragged him to memorials, a rainbow-lit vigil in Washington Square Park, eulogies laced with laughter over Zachary's terrible dad jokes. Connor nodded through it all, numb as Novocaine, sketching absent-mindedly on napkins, jagged lines of hospital beds, fists clenched against fate. One muggy August evening, 6 weeks after the funeral, Connor found himself at the Rusty Nail, a dive in the East Village Zachary had loved for its cheap IPAs and no questions asked vibe. He wasn't drinking to forget, just to feel something sharper than the dull ache in his chest. The bar was half empty, patrons hunched over phones under the flicker of neon signs advertising PBR on tap. Connor nursed a whiskey sour at the corner stool, staring into the amber swirl like it held answers. That's when the stranger slid onto the stool beside him. Mid-30s, maybe, with a jawline sharp as a switchblade and eyes the color of storm clouds. Gray, piercing, holding secrets like loaded dice. He wore a faded Mets cap pulled low, a threadbare Henley clinging to lean muscles honed from. What? Construction? Gym rat? His gaze flicked to Connor's bare ring finger, then back to his face, something unreadable flickering there. Rough night? The stranger asked, voice low and smooth, carrying the faint twang of the South Atlanta, maybe, or Charleston. No judgment, just an opening, like a door cracked in a blizzard. Connor shrugged, the motion heavy. Rough everything. He didn't elaborate. Strangers didn't get the autopsy of his soul. The man signaled the bartender, a double bourbon, neat, and turned fully, elbow on the scarred wood. Name's Elias. Elias Hart. You look like you've been carrying the weight of the Holland Tunnel on your back. Connor snorted. A bitter sound. Elias. Biblical. Fitting for Judgment Day. He took a swig, the burn grounding him. Connor. And yeah, something like that. Elias didn't push, just sipped his drink, letting the jukebox's croon of Springsteen fill the gap. Lost someone, he said finally, not a question. His fingers drummed the glass, callous tips betraying hands that worked for a living mechanic, perhaps, or artist gone rogue. Connor's throat tightened. Husband. Leukemia. 2 months ago. The words tumbled out, unbidden, like they'd been waiting for this dim-lit confessional. Elias's expression shifted. Sympathy, yes, but laced with something sharper, like recognition. I'm sorry. That's a particular kind of hell. He paused, gaze dropping to the bar top etched with initials and phone numbers. Zachary, right? Kane? Connor froze, the glass halfway to his lips. How the fuck do you know that? Elias met his eyes, steady as a heartbeat. Because I've been watching. Not in a creepy way, God. That sounds worse. Look, this is gonna sound insane, but Zachary wasn't just your husband. He was my brother. The world narrowed to the pulse in Connor's ears, the stranger's words hanging like smoke. Brother? Zachary had no siblings, orphaned young, bounced between aunts, a lone wolf in a packless world. Lies, Connor thought, anger flaring hot. But Elias's eyes held no malice, only a haunted plea. Half-brother, he clarified, voice dropping. Same dad, different moms. He never knew. And I have something that could have saved him. Connor's laugh was hollow, edged with hysteria. Saved him? He's dead. Elias. Whatever ghost story you're spinning, it doesn't rewrite the ending. Elias leaned in, breath warm against the bar's chill. A bone marrow match. Perfect. I got tested last year, anonymously through the registry. But I chickened out on the call. Thought. Hell, I don't know. Family drama from a lifetime ago. Now it's too late for Zach. But not for you. For me? Connor's mind reeled, fragments of grief and rage colliding. What the hell did this stranger know about saving anyone? Elias Hart wasn't the villain Connor's frayed nerves painted him as, at least, Not at first glance. Over the next hour, as the bar filled with after-work stragglers nursing regrets and cheap drafts, Elias unraveled his threadbare tale like a man confessing to a priest who'd seen it all. Born in Savannah, Georgia, to a father who fixed Chevys by day and drowned sorrows in Jim Beam by night. Richard Kane, Zachary's dad, unbeknownst to either son, had blown into town like a hurricane in '89, sweeping up Elias's mom, a diner waitress with dreams bigger than her tip jar. 9 months later, Elias arrived, squalling and red-faced, just as Richard packed his tools and vanished north, chasing whispers of better gigs in Boston. "Left us high and dry," Elias said, swirling the dregs of his bourbon. His drawl thickened with the memory, vowels stretching like taffy. "Mom remarried a decent guy. Stepdad ran a garage. Taught me wrenches from wrenches. But Dad? Radio silence till I was 18. Tracked him down via some online sleuthing. Showed up on his doorstep in Dorchester. He was married then to Zachary's mom, Italian firecracker, from what he said. Zach was 5, all curls and questions. Connor gripped his glass tighter, knuckles whitening. Zachary had spoken of his dad in fragments. The ghost who bailed before the divorce, the ache of unanswered birthday cards. Never a brother. "So you what? Dropped in, played happy family for a weekend, then ghosted." Elias winced, rubbing his jaw where a faint scar twisted like a question mark. "Worse. Dad confessed everything. The affair, the abandonment. Zach's mom flipped, threw me out like yesterday's grits. I bolted back south, buried it deep. Worked oil rigs in the Gulf, then landed in New York last year chasing a girl who ghosted me harder than Dad did Mom. That's when I saw the donor drive at Bellevue. Impulse thing got swabbed. Match came back, me to Zachary Kane. Irony. Ha! Connor's mind raced, piecing the puzzle through a fog of whiskey and what-ifs. If Elias had stepped up. No. He shoved the thought down, anger bubbling like soda left too long in the sun. You sat on it. Watched him waste away from the shadows. That's not irony. That's cowardice. Elias's eyes darkened, storm clouds gathering. Maybe. But fear's a hell of a chain. Connor. Dad died of liver failure when Zach was in college. Never reconciled. I figured, why drag up the mess? Then I saw you two online. Pride posts. That viral vid of you dancing at the Stonewall block party. Zach looked happy. Like he'd built something I never could. Calling would have shattered that. The jukebox clicked to Patsy Cline, her warble cutting through the din like a scalpel. Connor's chest ached, a fresh wave crashing over the old scars. You have no idea what we built. The nights he puked till his ribs showed, begging me not to cry. The way he'd hum Wonderwall off-key during infusions, just to make me smile. You think a phone call fixes that? Elias flagged the bartender for another round, his hand steady despite the tremor in his voice. It doesn't. But I'm here now. And that match is not just for Zach. Turns out, there's more genetic markers. Rare ones. Doctors think it runs in the blood. You get tested. We confirm. Maybe we catch it early if it's lurking. Connor barked a laugh, sharp as broken glass. Me? Leukemia's not contagious. Elias. And even if, Christ, you're delusional, but doubt wormed in, insidious. Zachary's doc had mentioned familial risks, urged genetic counseling they'd ignored in the chemo haze. Connor's own cough had started last month, a tickle he blamed on subway dust. Coincidence? Or the universe's cruel encore? They talked till last call, words spilling like spilled salt over shoulders already bowed. Elias sketched his life in broad strokes, bouncing between gigs as a freelance mechanic for Uber black cars, crashing on couches in Bushwick, nursing a string of flings that fizzled faster than New Year's resolutions. No family left. Mom gone to cancer in 15. Stepdad remarried and distant. "I'm the stray dog nobody claims," he said with a wry smile that didn't reach his eyes. Connor saw echoes of Zachary there, the tilt of the head, the way grief hardened resolve into something unbreakable. By the time they stepped into the muggy night, the city a symphony of sirens and sizzling street vendors, Connor's resolve had cracked just enough. "Fine," he muttered, hailing a cab that reeked of pine air freshener. "One test. For science, or closure, or whatever the fuck this is. But if it's nothing, you vanish. No more ghost brother bullshit." Elias nodded, rain-slicked cap shadowing his face as he slid into the back seat beside Connor. Their knees brushed, a spark, unintended, like static from wool socks on carpet. Connor pulled away, the contact too raw, too reminiscent of Zachary's casual touches. "Deal," Elias said softly. "But Connor, for what it's worth, Zach was lucky. In you." The cab lurched toward Williamsburg, weaving through potholes and pedestrians oblivious to the drama unfolding in its vinyl gut. Connor stared out at the blur of bodegas and graffiti-tagged stoops, Elias's words looping like a bad remix. "Lucky. Yeah, right." Luck didn't factor into flatlines at 34, or vows exchanged under pandemic masks. But as the skyline loomed, one world trade a defiant spire against the stars, Connor felt a stir, faint as a breeze off the Gowanus. Not hope, exactly. Curiosity, maybe. Or the masochistic pull of unfinished stories. The genetic counselor's office in Chelsea was a sterile oasis of beige walls and inspirational posters. "Your story isn't over." Connor arrived early the next morning, nursing a black coffee from the cart downstairs, Elias trailing 10 minutes late with a sheepish grin and a box of stale donuts as apology. "Traffic," he lied, though the faint whiskey shadow under his eyes told another tale. Sleepless night, perhaps, replaying the what-ifs. Dr. Lena Vasquez, a no-nonsense Latina in her 40s with a clipboard thicker than a phone book, walked them through it briskly. Swabs first, quick Q-tips to the inner cheek, sealed in biohazard bags like contraband. Then the questionnaire, family histories dissected like frogs in bio class, cancers mapped on pedigree charts that branched like lightning-struck trees. Connor's side was clean, Scranton steelworkers and schoolteachers, hardy as Pennsylvania coal. Elias's, a minefield. Mom's breast cancer at 48, an uncle lost to lymphoma in the Louisiana bayou. AML has a familial component in about 10% of cases. Dr. Vasquez explained, her pen tapping a staccato rhythm. If there's a shared mutation FLT3, NPM1 will know in 2 weeks. Early detection's your superpower here. Gentlemen, gentlemen. The word hung awkward, underscoring the oddity of their duo. Connor, compact and wiry with ink-stained fingers and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. Elias, taller, broader, his presence filling the room like smoke from a bonfire. They shook hands with the doc, professional, detached but outside. On the sun-dappled sidewalk of 7th Avenue, the air crackled with unspoken tension. Lunch, Elias ventured, shoving hands into his pockets. My treat. There's a falafel spot Zach would have loved, greasy, authentic, the works. Connor hesitated, the mention of Zachary a hook in his gut. But starvation won out. Grief had whittled his appetite to whispers. The hole in the wall on Bleecker was a sensory assault. Cumin-scented steam fogging windows, walls plastered with faded photos of Tel Aviv beaches. They squeezed into a corner booth, knees knocking under the formica top, plates piled with tahini-drenched pitas and pickled turnips. Conversation flowed easier over food, barriers lowered by shared carbs. Elias regaled with Gulf Coast tall tales, gator wrestling gone wrong, a hurricane that flooded his trailer and swept away his high school diploma. Connor countered with Brooklyn absurdities. The time Zachary talked him into a polar plunge in Sheepshead Bay, emerging blue-lipped and howling. Laughter came tentative at first, rusty as an old bike chain, but genuine. For the first time since the funeral, Connor felt the weight lift, if only an inch. You're a natural storyteller, Elias said, wiping hummus from his chin with a napkin. His gaze lingered, warm and appraising, stirring something dormant in Connor's chest, a flutter he dismissed as heartburn. Comes with the territory. Zach always said I could have been a comic book guy. Superheroes saving the day. One panel at a time. The words trailed off, melancholy seeping in like rain through a cracked window. Elias reached across, hesitating before covering Connor's hand with his own, rough palm against smooth, a grounding anchor. He sounds like he was the hero. You were the sidekick holding the flashlight. Connor didn't pull away. The touch lingered, electric in its simplicity, until the server cleared plates with a clatter. Outside, the afternoon sun baked the pavement, tourists snapping selfies by the High Line's wildflowers. This doesn't change anything, Connor said as they parted. Elias heading to a carburetor job in Red Hook. You're not family. Not yet. Elias nodded, backing toward the subway grate. Fair. But if the results say otherwise, we figure it out. Together. Connor watched him descend, swallowed by the earth's iron maw, a strange ache blooming where anger had reigned. Together. The word echoed Zachary's vows, a ghost promise in the summer haze. 2 weeks blurred into a montage of urban survival. Connor picking up freelance wires for a queer mag, illustrating covers of intertwined hands against cityscapes. Late nights scrolling donor forums, Elias's number burning a hole in his contacts. They texted sporadically, memes about bad drivers, a photo of Elias elbow-deep in an engine block, grease-smeared grin challenging Connor to guess the horsepower. Harmless, Connor told himself. Distraction from the void. The call came on a Thursday. Dr. Vasquez's voice clipped over speakerphone in Connor's loft. Positive for the FLT3 mutation. Both of you. Zachary's records confirm it. Your carrier's not active disease yet, but monitoring's key. Elias, your marrow's still a match if needed down the line. Silence stretched, thick as fog off the Hudson. Connor's pulse thundered, relief warring with terror. Carriers. The beast lurked in his veins, a sleeper cell waiting for its cue. What now? He managed, sinking onto the thrift store couch that still smelled faintly of Zachary's aftershave. Quarterly scans. Preventive meds. Live like it's tomorrow, because it might be. Click. Elias arrived an hour later, uninvited but expected, bearing 6 packs of Yangling and a deck of cards. To new beginnings, he toasted, clinking bottles on the fire escape overlooking the BQE's endless crawl. They played poker till midnight, strip variant, half joking, Elias folding dramatically on bluffs, Connor's competitive streak surfacing in rare blushes. Laughter turned to stories to silences filled with sidelong glances. As cicadas droned beyond the railing, Elias's knee pressed against Connor's. Deliberate this time. "You deserve more than ghosts, Con," he murmured, the nickname slipping out like a secret. Connor's breath hitched, Zachary's memory a specter between them, but the pull was undeniable, warm, insistent, alive. He leaned in, lips brushing Elias's in a tentative question. The kiss deepened, hungry and healing, hands roaming with the urgency of borrowed time. Clothes shed in a trail to the bedroom, bodies colliding like waves on rocky shores. Elias was fire to Zachary's steady flame, rough edges, urgent grips, whispers in that southern lilt that sent shivers down Connor's spine. "Let me in," Elias breathed against his neck, and Connor did, surrendering to the rhythm of skin on skin, the creak of the bed frame a defiant song against silence. Dawn filtered through blinds, painting their tangled limbs in gold. Guilt gnawed at Connor as Elias slept, chest rising steady beside him. Betrayal or rebirth? The line blurred, as thin as the skyline's haze. Fall crept in like a thief, leaves turning the parks into bonfires of red and gold. But for Connor, the season carried the sting of anniversaries. October marked 8 months since Zachary's diagnosis, a milestone that twisted like a knife in the gut. He threw himself into work, commissions for a LGBTQ+ history mural at the New York Public Library, bold strokes of lovers hand in hand through Stonewall riots and AIDS marches. Elias became a fixture, not quite boyfriend, not quite brother-in-law, but a gravitational pull Connor couldn't or wouldn't orbit alone. Their routine solidified in the crisp air. Mornings tangled in sheets, Elias's alarm blaring country rock before his dawn shifts tuning luxury sedans for stressed execs. Evenings on the couch, Connor sketching while Elias nursed a beer, feet propped on the coffee table scarred from Zachary's boot heels. They cooked disasters, Elias's gumbo too spicy, Connor's risotto a gluey mess, but ate them anyway, laughing over the wreckage. Intimacy bloomed in stolen moments. A hand on the small of Connor's back in crowded delis, lazy Sundays tracing tattoos across Elias's ribs, a compass rose for lost directions, a sparrow for his mom. Yet shadows lingered. Connor's scans came back clean, but the what-ifs whispered in quiet hours. Elias, too, carried burdens unspoken. Nights he'd bolt upright, sweating from dreams of oil-slick waves claiming his youth. Gulf PTSD, he'd mutter, pulling Connor close as armor. They danced around the brother bomb, tiptoeing past family trees that branched into minefields. "Tell me about him," Elias would say sometimes, over takeout faux steaming on the windowsill. "Zach. The real shit, not the highlights," Connor obliged in fragments. Zachary's habit of quoting Rent during traffic jams. No day but today. His fierce advocacy for trans patients at the ER. Slipping extra socks into discharge bags. Elias listened, hunger in his eyes, piecing together the sibling he'd forfeited. "Sounds like he got the best parts of Dad," he'd say, voice thick. The fighter, not the flake. Thanksgiving loomed. A holiday Connor had always dodged with Zachary, charcuterie boards, and Netflix instead of turkey trots. This year, Elias pushed for tradition. My stepdad's place upstate. Cabin in the Catskills. Neutral ground. Connor relented, craving normalcy like a man parched. They piled into Elias's battered Ford pickup, leaves crunching under tires as they wound north on the Taconic Parkway, radio blasting Lucinda Williams. The cabin was a relic, log walls patched with duct tape, a stone fireplace belching smoke into the November chill. Elias's stepdad, Harlan, was a bear of a man with grease under his nails and a grip like a vice. "Heard 'bout your loss," he rumbled over venison stew, clapping Connor's shoulder hard enough to rattle teeth. "Elias here's been mooning over family like a damn poet." "'Bout time," Elias flushed, ladling gravy with undue focus. Dinner unfolded in awkward harmony. Harlan's war stories from Vietnam vets' reunions, Connor's tales of Brooklyn brunches gone viral. But as pie plates cleared, the questions sharpened. "So, you two, brothers in spirit now?" Harlan asked, eyebrow arched over his pipe. Elias choked on cider, Connor's fork pausing midair. "Something like that," Elias managed, his boot nudging Connor's under the table, a Morse code of reassurance. Night fell early, stars pricking the velvet sky like diamond studs. They retreated to the loft bed under rafters, Harlan's snores rumbling below like distant thunder. Elias's hands roamed familiar paths, but Connor tensed, the weight of secrets pressing. What if he knew? Connor whispered into the dark, Elias's stubble grazing his jaw. "About you. Would Zach have wanted this, us?" Elias stilled, breath warm against Connor's ear. "He'd want you happy. Not haunted." The words were a bomb, but doubt festered, a splinter under skin. Back in the city, the idyll fractured. December brought a freelance dry spell, bills stacking like Jenga blocks on the kitchen counter. Elias picked up overtime, coming home bone-tired, smelling of motor oil and Marlboros he'd sworn off. Arguments sparked over trifles, Elias's forgotten laundry, Connor's late nights at the library, charcoal dust on the sheets. "You're pulling away," Connor accused one snowy evening, snowflakes melting on the fire escape. Elias slammed the fridge, beer foaming over his knuckles. "And you're clinging to ghosts. Zach's gone. Con. I'm here. Flesh and blood, your blood. If you forgot." The slap of words stung worse than any hand. Connor recoiled, vision blurring. "You think this is easy? Loving again feels like betrayal." Elias's face crumpled, anger yielding to ache. "Then why keep me around? Pity fuck for the secret brother." Silence stretched, brittle as icicles. Connor reached out, fingers brushing Elias's sleeve. "Because you're more than that. But it scares me. All of it." They made up in the shower, steam fogging the mirror like unspoken vows, bodies slick and urgent under the scalding spray. "I'm all in," Elias murmured, water cascading over them like absolution. No more half measures. Christmas Eve found them at a queer carol sing-along in Tompkins Square, mugs of spiked hot cider warming gloved hands. Elias belted, "Oh Holy Night" off-key, drawing laughs from drag elves in fishnets. Connor watched, heart swelling, this man, with his scarred hands and stormy eyes, weaving light into his darkness. Later, under the tree they'd half-assed with string lights and Zachary's old ornaments, Elias knelt with a small box. Not a ring, a key, etched with a sparrow. "To the truck. To the road. To whatever comes next," Elias said, voice rough. Connor pulled him up, kissing him fierce under the twinkling glow. Yes, he breathed. To us. But fate, that capricious bitch, had other plans. New Year's dawned with a voicemail from Dr. Vasquez. Connor, your latest blood work flagged abnormalities. Elevated blast. We need you in for a full workup. Now. The words landed like a sucker punch in the gut of the loft. Elias frozen mid-sip of coffee, mug trembling. Connor's world tilted again, the skyline outside mocking with its unyielding steel. Leukemia. His turn in the ring with the beast that claimed Zachary. It can't be, he whispered, but the evidence mocked him. Fatigue he'd blamed on stress. Bruises blooming like ink blots on his shins. Elias sprang into action, canceling gigs, bundling Connor into a cab to Mount Sinai, the same ward that had echoed with Zachary's final breaths. Scans whirred, needles pricked, doctors murmuring in jargon that blurred into white noise. Early stage, they said, a small mercy. Bone marrow transplants the gold standard. And Elias. He's still a viable donor. The irony was biblical. A cruel loop. Brother's blood to save the widower. Elias didn't hesitate, signing consents with a pen that shook only slightly. Whatever it takes, he told the transplant team, squeezing Connor's hand in the pre-op haze. You're not doing this alone. Prep was a gauntlet. Ablation chemo to scorch the marrow clean. Isolation gowns turning their loft into a biohazard zone. Elias moved in fully, sleeping on the floor beside the hospital bed when visits allowed, reading aloud from Connor's sketchbooks, narrating heroes who defied odds with capes of conviction. Friends rallied again. Potlucks delivered by Uber Eats. Video calls from Scranton where Connor's mom finally choked out. We're here, son. Proud. Through the nausea fog, Connor clung to Elias's voice, the low timbre anchoring him like a lighthouse in storm. Remember Savannah? Elias would say, dabbing sweat from Connor's brow. Gators bigger than Buicks. This is nothing. Laughter bubbled weak but real. A rebellion against the 4 drips metronome. Transplant day arrived in February's brittle cold, snow blanketing Central Park like a shroud. Elias lay in the or adjacent, surgeons harvesting his lifeblood, stem cells infused with hope. Connor waited in recovery, monitors beeping a tentative duet. Hours later, the drip began. Elias's essence flooding his veins, rewriting him cell by cell. Complications hit like a freight train. Engraftment fever spiked to 104. Hallucinations blurring hospital whites into Zachary's green eyes. Accusing. Traitor, the ghost whispered, and Connor wept. Elias banished to the hall by infection protocols. Fight! Elias pleaded through the glass door, palm pressed flat, mirroring Connor's. For us, days bled into weeks, the fever breaking like a dam under spring thaw. Clean scans followed, cautious optimism from the team. He's engrafting, Dr. Vasquez announced, her smile a rare sunbeam. Elias burst in gowned, masked, eyes crinkling above the blue, with a bouquet of daisies pilfered from the nurse's station. Told you, he grinned, collapsing into the visitor chair. Stubborn as hell, Connor, frail but fierce, pulled him close, masks be damned. Couldn't leave you. Not when we're just getting started. Spring unfurled tentative petals as Connor rebuilt. Physical therapy laps around the ward. Elias pushing the wheelchair with exaggerated engine revs. Discharge came in April, The loft aired out like a fresh canvas. They celebrated with rooftop picnics, falafel wraps, and cheap champagne, watching ferries slice the East River under cherry blossoms. But restoration unearthed rot. One evening, rifling Zachary's old box for a charger, Connor unearthed a flash drive tucked in a sock drawer. Curiosity overrode caution. He plugged it into his laptop, files blooming like forbidden fruit. Emails. Dozens. Time-stamped during Zachary's business trips to Boston conferences. To a name, J.D. Tender missives laced with, "I miss you," and "can't wait for next time." Heart hammering. Connor scrolled. Hotel receipts. Blurry selfies of Zachary entwined with a faceless man. Lean build. Dark hair. Betrayal. Sharp as shattered glass. Zachary, his anchor, had cheated. For months, maybe years. The why blurred stress from ER horrors, wanderlust in their monogamous rut. Tears streamed, hot and accusatory. Elias found him there, curled fetal on the rug, drive clutched like evidence. Con? What's? Words died as Connor thrust it forward. Voice splintered. He lied. All of it. Our vows. The forever bullshit. Elias scanned the screen, jaw clenching. Recognition dawned, slow and seismic. J.D. Jason. Me? No. Fuck. No. He sank back, color draining. That conference in 22. We hooked up. One night. He said he was single, exploring. I didn't know. The room spun, connections snapping like live wires. Elias and Zachary. Before the secret. Before the match. A one-night stand turned tangled web. You knew, Connor hissed, betrayal layering threefold. When you approached me at the bar. You fucking knew. Elias's eyes glistened, hands raised in surrender. Not at first. The name clicked later, after the donor match. I thought. Silence was mercy. But this, Con, it was nothing. A mistake. Nothing. Connor surged up, fists balled. He died in my arms. Elias, promising eternity while fucking your brothers, your God. I can't even. Rage propelled him out, slamming the door on Elias's pleas, streets swallowing him in a blur of neon and nausea. He wandered till dawn, benches in Washington Square yielding no solace, only the chill of isolation. Zachary's ghost loomed larger. The coughs, the cuddles, all laced with deceit. And Elias, savior, lover, now Judas with a sibling secret. Dawn broke gray, pigeons scattering as Connor slumped against the arch, sobs racking his healing frame. The fallout was a slow-motion car wreck, shards of trust littering the loft like confetti from a funeral parade. Connor barricaded himself for days, phone silenced, sketches abandoned in half-formed fury, jagged figures clawing at chains, lovers dissolving into smoke. Elias respected the space at first, texts trickling like hesitant rain. I'm sorry. Talk to me. I love you. The L word landed like a grenade, unreciprocated, exploding the fragile peace. Friends intervened, dragged him to therapy sessions at the center in the West Village, where a soft-spoken counselor named Raj unpacked the layers. Grief compounded by gaslighting, love twisted by legacy. Betrayal doesn't erase the good, Raj said over herbal tea, his bangles clinking softly. But it reframes it. What do you want your story to be now? Connor didn't know. Nights blurred into bar crawls, drowning doubt in well whiskeys at the Rusty Nail, the site of their twisted origin. Strangers flirted, baristas with dimples, gym bros with easy grins, but none stuck, echoes of Elias's touch haunting every almost. Zachary's drive became a Pandora's box. Reread in masochistic loops. Miss your laugh, Zachary wrote to Jason. Con's great, but you're the spark. Spark. The word ignited fresh rage. How many sparks had dimmed their flame? Elias, meanwhile, unraveled in parallel. Harlan called from the Catskills. Voice gravel over static. Boys a mess. Sleepin' in the shop. Fixin' engines like their hearts. He showed up at the loft's buzzer one rainy Tuesday. Soaked to the bone. A bottle of Maker's Mark dangling from numb fingers. Connor buzzed him up against better judgment. The door creaking open to a man hollowed out. Eyes shadowed. Shoulders slumped under the weight of unspoken sins. Not here to beg, Elias started, dripping on the welcome mat. Just truth. All of it. He sank onto the couch, uninvited but unchallenged, pouring measures into mismatched mugs. The tale poured out unvarnished. That Boston night, Zachary loose from panels on trauma care, both nursing beers in a harborside pub. He was magnetic, funny, fierce. We ended up at my motel. No strings. He left at dawn. Said, tell no one. I didn't connect dots till the donor alert. Saw his obit with your name. Approached you at the nail thinking. Fate, redemption, stupid. Connor leaned against the kitchenette counter. Arms crossed like armor. And the sex? With me? Pity? Conquest? Elias's head snapped up. Hurt flashing raw. Love? You idiot. From the first laugh. Your fire. Konzak was the match. But you. You burn steady. He set the mug down. Deliberate. I chickened on the donor call cause of guilt. Banged his husband-to-be? No, banged him. Then saved you with my blood. Cosmic joke. Laughter escaped Connor. Bitter and broken. Joke's on me. Built my life on lies. He slid down the cabinets. Knees to chest. The linoleum cold through his jeans. He promised forever. You promised honesty. Elias crossed the room on knees. Close but not touching. I failed. But I'm not him. Let me prove it. The rain outside intensified, drumming a requiem on the skylight. Minutes stretched, charged with the scent of bourbon and regret. Connor's hand twitched, bridging the gap, fingers lacing with Elias's, rough against smooth. Fuck you for making sense, Connor muttered, pulling him into a kiss that tasted of salt and second chances. They tumbled to the rug, urgent and unhurried, reclaiming space in sighs and shudders. After, tangled in throw blankets, Elias traced the port scar on Connor's chest, a faded asterisk from the transplant. This binds us, he whispered. Not blood. Choice. Forgiveness wasn't a switch flipped. It was a dam cracking, floods of what-ifs rushing through. They rebuilt brick by brick, couples counseling in a Chelsea brownstone, where Raj mediated the mess with gentle probes. Boundaries, he urged. What does trust look like now? Elias journaled. Pages filled with Southern proverbs and mechanic metaphors, while Connor channeled pain into art. A gallery show at a Bushwick co-op. Echoes. Portraits of phantom lovers dissolving into city grids. Spring ripened into summer, the city shedding winter's skin like a snake. Elias proposed a road trip, echoing that key from Christmas. piling the truck with coolers and canvases, heading south to trace routes. Savannah welcomed with humid arms, azaleas blooming riotous along Forsyth Park squares. Elias's old neighborhood was a time capsule. Shotgun houses sagging under Spanish moss, the garage where Harlan had taught him torque wrenches now a memory etched in rust. They met Elias's estranged half-aunt, a wiry woman named Dolores with bingo wings and a laugh like gravel, over shrimp and grits at a riverside joint. "Heard 'bout the brother thing," she said, eyeing Connor with shrewd appraisal. "Family's messy as low-country mud. But blood calls when it's ready." She pulled photo albums from a trunk in her attic. Baby Elias pudgy-cheeked on a tire swing, Richard Kane grinning cocky in faded Polaroids, Zachary a ghostly absence in the margins. Nights in a rented Airstream trailer hummed with fireflies and fire pit confessions. "Dad wrote me once," Elias admitted, embers glowing on his face. "After Zach's mom kicked him out. Protect your own," he said. Irony. Ha! Connor shared his own ghosts. Scranton Christmases with parents who prayed away his phase. The day he came out and they hugged him anyway, tentative as thawing ice. The drive north looped through D.C., detours to monuments where queer history etched stone, the AIDS quilt panels fluttering like flags of surrender. In a motel off I-95, sweat slick and sated, Connor broached the unbroached. "Marry me," he said. Not a question, breath ragged. Elias stilled, then grinned wolfish. "Thought you'd never ask." Back in New York, wedding plans unfolded like origami birds, small, at a rooftop in the Village, guests a mix of Brooklyn queers and Southern stragglers. Harlan officiated, voice booming vows under string lights, in sickness and health, in secrets and truths. Rings exchanged, simple bands etched with sparrows, sealed it, Connor's kiss fierce with finality. The climax brewed in autumn's undercurrent. Connor's 6-month post-transplant scan flagged anomalies, rejection whispers, the beast stirring anew. Panic clawed, Elias pacing the waiting room like a caged panther. "Fight it," he growled, but fear etched lines deeper than years. Dr. Vasquez delivered the blow in her office, charts glowing on a screen. Graft versus host creeping in. "We suppress, but it's aggressive. Prognosis, months, if unchecked." Elias volunteered for round 2 more marrow. Risks doubled. "No," Connor insisted, voice steel. "You've given enough. Find another way." Desperation birthed defiance. Connor dove into trials, experimental immunotherapy at Sloan Kettering, gene therapy targeting the FLT3 mutation like a sniper. Elias rallied support, fundraisers at the Nail, mechanics donating shop time for auctions. Nights dissolved into research binges, laptops aglow till Elias pulled Connor to bed, bodies a bulwark against biopsy bruises. The betrayal's echo resurfaced in a letter, unearthed from Zachary's box during a purge, addressed to Jason, unsent. "I love Con, but you woke something wild. Forgive me." Tears blurred ink, but clarity followed, humanity in the mess, not malice. "He was flawed," Connor told Elias over dawn coffee. "Skyline awakening. Like us. That's the grace." Trial 1 crashed, side effects a hurricane of neuropathy and nausea. Elias held the basin, whispering litanies of one more day. Relapse loomed, shadows lengthening, but love sharpened focus. A second protocol beckoned, CAR-T cells, engineered assassins for the Leukemia Legion. Infusion day dawned crisp, October leaves swirling like confetti omens. Elias wheeled him in, grip iron on the chair arms. "Come back to me," he murmured, kiss lingering at the hors d'oeuvres. Hours ticked in the family lounge. Harlan pacing with a rosary clicked from his pocket. Friends murmuring prayers secular and sacred. Recovery was a crucible. Isolation again, but laced with video calls. Elias's face pixelated but potent, reading from a worn copy of Giovanni's Room. Baldwin's prose a lifeline. Fevers raged, but broke. Counts climbed. Tentative flags of truce. Discharge came mid-November, air biting with promise, snow dusting the bridges like powdered sugar. The loft welcomed them home, garlands strung premature. A banner scrawled, "Remission Round 2. Elias carried Connor over the threshold. Cheesy, necessary, their laughter echoing off walls that held every scar and stitch. Winter wrapped the city in its icy embrace, but for Connor and Elias, it was a season of cautious bloom. Remission held, scans pristine as fresh snow, though vigilance shadowed every joy like a faithful hound. They honeymooned domestically, a long weekend in the Adirondacks, cabin fever yielding to cross-country skis and hot toddies by crackling fires. Elias carved their initials into a birch trunk, a quiet claim against the wood's vast indifference. "Till the trees fall," he joked, but his eyes held the weight of oaths unspoken. Back home, life resumed its chaotic waltz. Connor's Echoes show sold out at the Bushwick Gallery, collectors snapping up pieces that bled vulnerability. One, a diptych of Zachary's silhouette merging into Elias's form, titled Inheritance. Critics hailed it a queer odyssey of loss and lineage, but for Connor, it was catharsis rendered in oils and ache. Elias beamed from the crowd, proud as punch, toasting with craft IPAs at the after-party. "My husband's a genius," he'd say, arm slung possessive around Connor's waist, drawing envious glances from art scene ingenues. Family mended in fits and starts. Connor's parents ventured east for a stilted Christmas, Scranton stoicism cracking over eggnog when Elias recounted Gulf gators with theatrical flair. "He's a keeper," Connor's dad grunted, clapping Elias's back. Approval, Pennsylvania style. Dolores flew up for New Year's, her bingo winnings funding a spread of collards and cornbread, toasting to kin reclaimed in the loft's cramped kitchen. Even Harlan softened, mailing tools etched with sparrows. "For the fixer in you," the note read. Yet humanity's core pulsed in the quiet fractures. Elias's own health check revealed a benign cyst, nothing, but enough to bind them tighter in mutual mortality. They adopted rituals, monthly scan dates at a cozy bistro in Soho, celebrating clean bills with oysters and oaky Chardonnay, annual pilgrimages to Zachary's grave in Greenwood Cemetery, Brooklyn's Gothic sprawl a fitting crypt for a man who'd loved fiercely flawed. Connor left sketches, portraits of their triad, ghosts included, while Elias poured a splash of bourbon, toasting to the brother I never knew, but always owed. Spring 2026 brought unexpected grace. A positive test, not for disease, but life. IVF. After months of consultations and hormone haze, Elias's swimmers, Connor's resolve, a surrogate from a upstate agency with a laugh like wind chimes. "Our legacy," Elias whispered at the ultrasound, grainy image flickering like a promise kept. They named her Riley Kane Riley Hart, a mash of heritages, fierce as her daddy's fight. Parenthood appended their rhythm, the loft echoing with cries and coos. Sleepless nights traded for dawn feedings under Constellation mobiles. Elias proved a natural, rough hands gentle with burp cloths, singing off-key lullabies of Delta blues. Connor sketched her tiny fists, archiving milestones in journals thick with love. Friends formed a village, drag aunties spoiling her with glittery onesies, Harlan shipping hand-whittled toys from the Catskills. Challenges lingered, human as heartbeat. Elias's wanderlust surfaced in spring fever, eyes drifting to job postings in Austin's tech garages. Just dreaming, he'd say, but Connor called the bluff over kitchen coffee, steam curling like question marks. We're a unit. No solo acts. Arguments flared, Elias's temper short as a blown fuse, Connor's insecurities flaring like old scars, but cooled in counseling. Raj's office a neutral harbor. One balmy June evening, as Riley gurgled in her bouncer to the hum of the city below, Elias dropped to one knee again, this time with a ring, sapphire-studded for Zachary's eyes. Renewal, he said, voice gravel-soft. Marry me twice. Make it stick. Connor laughed through tears, pulling him up into a kiss that tasted of forever reforged. Summer solstice found them at the Stonewall Inn, the bar where Zachary had first sparked Connor's world. Riley in a sling against Elias's chest, patrons toasting the couple who'd weathered tempests. To unexpected saviors, a drag queen trilled, feather boa tickling Riley's toes. Outside, on Christopher Street, rainbow flags snapped in the breeze, a procession of prides passed marching eternal. Years folded like an accordion, Riley's first steps tottering across the loft's rag rugs, her laughter a balm for phantom pains. Connor's art evolved, galleries in Chelsea, a children's book on families like stars, scattered but shining. Elias opened a shop in Red Hook, Heart and Hammer, specializing in EV conversions for eco-queer commuters, Harlan consulting via Zoom with gruff wisdom. Betrayals faded to footnotes, lessons etched in resilience. On anniversaries, they visited the hospital rooftop where Connor had once whispered goodbyes to Zachary. Now, with Riley babbling at pigeons, they toasted life reclaimed. He'd be proud, Elias said once, wind whipping his hair. Connor nodded, arm around his husband's waist. Of all of us, the end wasn't tidy, no grand fade to credits, but human, textured as Brooklyn brownstones. In their 40s, gray threading temples, they adopted a second, a boy from foster care, Jamal, with Zachary's lopsided grin and Elias's stormy gaze. The loft expanded to a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, walls alive with murals and noise, dinners raucous with stories, bedrooms bunked with dreams. Connor's final scan, 50, glowed clean as a canvas. Elias waited outside, as always, truck idling with the engine's patient purr. Home? He asked, hand extended. Always, Connor replied, lacing fingers rough, smooth, bound by blood and choice. In the rear view, the skyline receded, a testament to storms survived. Life, they knew, was no straight line but a mosaic, shards of loss pieced into light. And in that fractured beauty, they found their humanity, flawed, fierce, unyieldingly theirs.